Okay.
So now here's the next step. I'm going to be 100 years old this year. Right? So I go to university and sing about that. I mean, it's our heritage to be able to start. Are you serious? So I said to they have this great collection of little jars. I said, could I?
Teachers College.
Yeah, I mean,
We should be sending people to this, I think. You know,
What kind does it attract a certain kind of faculty?
well,
That's media faculty.
not really. It's non-specific on discipline. But what they do ask is it tends to be an opportunity for you to get back to the roots of why you teach. You know, kind of earthy, if you want to look at it that way.
So if I could have your attention, again, welcome to our Fair Trade brunch. And my name is Melinda Messinio. I'm director of the Freshman Connections program. And this experience is part of our sophomore read experience. This is a unique opportunity because we have been working with an author, Kelsey Timmerman, to have a 4-year cohort experience that was connected to the Freshman Common Reader, which last year was Where Am I Wearing? This year we're doing a sophomore read, which is Where Am I Eating? And I hope you each got a copy of that. We're very excited to be here in the Downtown Farmstand working with Dave Rick, who has been extremely active in the local community, working with locally sourced foods, organic foods, fair trade initiatives.
So when you're having something, you're having a food item that's sourced from the developing world, fair trade plays a really important role in knowing in this day and age that your vanilla beans or your chocolate or your tea or your coffee wasn't sourced from slave labor or just terrible working conditions or people who are basically just taken advantage of. I can't go over and see, like Kelsey did, exactly where my coffee comes from. And fair trade certification is a really good way of having an independent agency, a nonprofit agency in the middle that's sourcing, making sure people are getting paid a fair wage for the important food producing work that they do, making sure that the conditions are safe, and then the fair trade certification that the farms actually pay for. A lot of times that money will go back into the communities and they'll dig wells and do important infrastructure work in those developing world communities. So, our commitment to fair trade has always been really high because there's just a lot of those foods that we're not ever going to be able, you can't source cinnamon, locally, and you can't source chocolate locally, and coffee and bananas and those different things. So having that organization in the middle is really important for our values in food production. Now, local
and we always joked about how in a good year, if you could get 75% of like your turkeys to live until Thanksgiving, then that was a good job because turkeys are just too stupid to live. There are just so many things that you put in so much of yourself and your time and your money, and it just, for us, it didn't work. But I think, by the time we got out, there were a lot of other farmers in the area who had sprung up, and it was one of the coolest things about like that kind of farming community is it really is a great community. A couple years ago, there was a local farmer who his wife was struck by lightning, and seeing like the way that the Central Indiana farmers came together for that, it was a really cool, beautiful thing. And tragic, she's never going to be the same, but you see the way that slow food culture really, I think, changes people for the better. Community mindedness and this idea that everybody really matters, that food really matters. Our farm is passed down through my dad's family several generations, and it was a dairy farm, and then they did row crops and stuff like that. And my grandfather died in a farming accident 24 years ago. The reason why my dad converted it to an organic farm is he said, if you hadn't have died in a farm accident, you probably would have died 10 years later of cancer. It just like one way or another, farming was going to kill him. And, the way that people do farming now, it's just, it's not life-giving. It's just not. So it is really cool. It's just to see that just made me laugh. laugh when you talked about like people want tomatoes and like green beans. Like it's very bok choy is a very hard sell for people in Central Indiana. So yeah.
So do you think that if there had been a store like similar to this in every town this size, would it have been easier for your farm to survive?
I think so. My dad and I were actually just talking about how there was one time my dad had this deal with Whole Foods to sell them a ton of zucchini. Fell through at the last minute. It's really disappointing to have that much zucchini that you can't move because zucchini grows.
It goes bad.
It goes bad. We fed chickens a lot of zucchini that summer. If we had a market for that other than the markets that we went to, and going to markets was so expensive. We went to 5 every week, and it requires a vehicle. You get up at 4 in the morning on Saturday to pack all the trucks and go, and you have to pay 5 different crews of people to do that. And sometimes it rains and you sell almost nothing, and sometimes it goes super well, but we would have $200 days and $2,000 days. It was just so inconsistent to do and you have to pay for gas for all the vehicles, and to trust that some neighborhood high school person is not going to crash your vehicle or burn something down, or it's a lot of trust and a lot of investment for something that there's no guarantee of any kind of return.
Undercut the price of people are coming locally, and you as the consumer just walking around, you're like, well, these tomatoes are a lot cheaper than these tomatoes, I'm going to get these tomatoes, and they're all at the farmer's market, but they may have been purchased much further away, produced in a very different way, potentially, so you don't always know what you're getting. And one of our visits to the farmer's market will look at this idea about the complexities and the challenges of doing a farmer's market, because they're not all equal. Did you want to add anything about it?
We've been trying to encourage Minnetrista to be a producers-only farmer's market for a long time. We haven't had any luck yet, but basically what supplies this market here is that there's produce auctions in Bryant and over in Knightstown. And so you've got people who are just resellers, and they'll take their pickup truck and they'll go over and pick up produce at a produce auction and come over here and sell it. And the customer is under the mistaken impression that the person who's selling them their food actually grew it, which isn't true. The guy's picked it up super cheap and he's selling it off super cheap. And then this person who's next to him and has worked really hard to grow his produce and is trying to get a living wage, customers will actually be nasty. They walk you, you're charging too much, you're ripping it off. It's a really hostile environment. That there aren't good rules that are in place, but it's a one-size-fits-all type of system when it comes to health department regulation. Some of those regulations are starting to change now. They're starting to become a little bit more small farm friendly, but they're pretty invasive regulations when most of this got started. It's changing slowly. But you can't, most small farmers would not be able to afford to build a facility that can, because you're talking about wastewater, the amount of treatment, sewage connections. There's many different regulations.
Isn't that insane? Because mainstream stores sell a lot of what they sell. Nobody in their right mind should eat, and that's legal. Yeah, can.
Right. Yeah, we can eat super processed foods that have lots of chemicals and they're used in the processing of them, and that's okay.
Sure.
But we can't, have something. We can't have buyer beware, where if you want to buy something from a farmer, if he's produced it, you can't make that choice yourself.
Yeah. A lot of times organic farmers just have to get really creative with that. We had some friends who sold organic milk, but you can't really do that, there's no pasteurized and stuff. Yeah. And so what they did was they sold shares of cows, and we got a penny of what came out of that cow. And so they, you could buy a gallon of whole unpasteurized milk. That's about the only way that they could do it.
Because the law states that if you own the cow, you can drink the milk. So you should. So yeah, there's all, if you're willing to look up the laws and find the loopholes, that's one way to get things done. So what we do though, and what we're working on, is trying to spread awareness, consumer to consumer, and then we talk to you guys about it. You go out and talk to your friends, and then it builds this growing consensus around the state And then before you know it, people are calling their legislatures and sending emails, and then they're worried about getting reelected, so they're going to change, write bills and change things. And don't let anybody ever tell you that that doesn't work, because it does work. It takes people actually caring and actually taking the time to get involved and do something. And then if you do that, you'd be surprised how easy it is to make a difference. I tell people that all the time. It's not that hard, because there's not that many people doing it. So you call your legislature, or you call a local official and speak your mind, and things happen because they don't get that many calls. That's how it works.